Hi, welcome to Gruesome Twosome Reviews, and I'm Jay Gruesome.
I'm Jay Putrid.
And today we are going to be reviewing 2015's We Are Still Here. So, jumping into the plot, after losing their son, a grieving couple moves into an isolated house and experiences paranormal activity that may be their deceased son. Or is it? So, we're going to go ahead and jump into the cons on this modern supernatural thriller. And, yeah.
So one of the cons that that I had with this, like one of the problems I had with this movie was how odd the town folk were in this movie. Like, it literally seemed like they fucking killed someone and they literally had the body like right behind them and they're doing their best to try to cover it up. You know, they're just very suspicious as hell, and they're like very like, okay, I get it, you know, it's like if you move into a small town, you know, like people are unfriendly, they're just kind of shifty towards you or whatever. But this just like took it to like an extreme, you know, where it's like they were guilty.
It's painfully obvious that something is up with the way that they are treating these newcomers. And there's obviously something up with the house that we know of as like the movie watchers, but it's also the townspeople that make it painfully obvious that there's something up with the house. And is it that they murdered someone there, or who knows?
The town has a dark past.
But it's just so painfully obvious that you would expect our main characters to actually catch on right away and just say, this isn't just us being new in town and this is how they're reacting. This is something on a totally different level, and yes, we shouldn't let these people into our home anymore or even keep in contact with them.
And like, you know what, maybe we should look at that other place we were looking at, you know.
Yeah, we get out of there. And that's just something that it was a little too obvious, and it would have been great to have it less obvious. Yes, they could have had that small town mentality of being distant and you know, kind of rude to people that are new in their town. They don't know these people. They're not from here. They didn't go to, you know, our schools and our churches and whatever. So, I don't know. I would have liked to see something that was a little less obvious, I guess.
A little more subtle.
Yeah. And another thing is that the couple kind of figures out, or they don't really figure out what is up with the house. They just know that it's haunted because they're being tormented by, you know, these two aspects. You get the townspeople that they're tormented by being really sketchy, and then you get the supernatural happenings within the house. That
may or may not be their son.
Yeah, and it becomes more apparent as it goes on that this is something that, you know, probably isn't. Because it's just evil. So, we would have liked to see development with the couple uncovering the mystery of the house. And instead, they do it a little differently, you know, without giving away too much. It's just, we figure everything out through the townspeople. We figure everything out through side stories of, like, these townspeople having conversations. So you realize that, in the end, the main characters actually didn't know anything at all. It's just kind of like, they're still assuming that this thing is their son until, you know, we kind of get to the end. But we'll get to that in a minute.
and also they, another thing too about this movie is that they introduce another couple, which is more like this, these new age couple. Well, this new age couple that, you know, the wife is like very sensitive to these things, and the son was actually the son of
the new age couple.
The new age couple was actually friends with the deceased son So that's another reason why they get brought in, and they're introduced into this story. So jumping from there, another issue that we had was the new age couple's son and his girlfriend.
Yeah, these characters are in the movie so briefly. I'll just give it away. They get killed off right away with...
Yeah, they're literally there to just, add to the body count.
Yeah, I think it's adding to the body count and kind of just jump-starting that snowballing effect that the rest of the movie has after those deaths. And the thing is, their deaths actually go unnoticed for most of the movie, even by the parents. The bodies are never found or anything. They're just, they're
just killed, and then it's like, okay, on to the next thing, and you don't hear about it after that.
There's just one scene, near the end/climax of the movie where the husband of the new age couple becomes possessed by whatever is in the house, and that's when it's revealed that they took his son.
His son and his son's girlfriend.
It literally takes that long for it to get back to that point. So I think in that sense, I was just kind of like, are they ever going to, bring these characters back in? Because their deaths were so abrupt.
Yeah.
And, well, their appearance and their death. So it's just, I don't know. I think that was just poor writing. They didn't even have to bring in that character. But like he was saying, it's probably just for the body count.
Yeah. Going back to earlier with the townsfolk, another issue I had with this movie was the fact that, they're not really uncovering the dark past of the actual town itself. That kind of would have been cool, because just giving it away, this is very much a nod to Italian horror film, specifically House by the Cemetery.
Yes.
And, there's some reading that goes on in House by the Cemetery to figure out what's going on. And the same thing with, The Beyond also.
Yeah.
And I feel like if this movie had scenes like that, or, had development like this where they figure it out, or they start piecing together certain things, and there's more emphasis on the curse of the town, I think that would have actually benefited the story a lot more.
I think so too. I think it would have made it a lot more thrilling rather than focusing on things like body count. Yeah, that's always great, especially for, us gorehounds and stuff, but that's not something you want to base all of your story on, because, let's face it, there's no real development that happens because of that.
Yeah.
So I completely agree. I think there should have been some uncovering of whatever darkness looms over this town and its people and this house, and why the hell this house is haunted in the first place. It would have been great to see, even both couples kind of coming together and piecing everything, especially because you get this new age couple where the wife is medium.
Yeah.
So it would have been excellent to see stuff like that. But it's more like, it might have just been part editing, part just bad storytelling. It's that...
Or maybe just, they didn't have a lot of time to shoot this, or budgetary reasons, because this is more of an independent film that was made.
Yeah, this is not something that you would have seen released in all theaters, nationwide or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just would have been cool to take that route, and see that route being taken, rather than what they did in the final shoot of this movie.
Yeah, it doesn't take away from the movie, so I think at this point it's actually would probably be a good idea if we go into the pros of this movie, because there is actually a lot of pros.
Yeah, in no way is this movie, or pretty much any of the movies that we put on our reviews, perfect 10 out of 10 movies. we're always going to find the cons with them. And I think a lot of the cons here were just based on, because we're always big with cohesive storytelling, effects, and, just if it's a great movie overall.
If it's an engaging story.
Yeah, and I feel that, to find the cons in movies, it might be nitpicking to some, but these are reasons why it's not a perfect 10 out of 10 movie.
Yeah.
So anyway, a little sidetracked there. Let's move on to the pros. So one of the greatest things, and I think this is what actually makes this movie so strong, is the set design and the creature design.
Yes.
The blending of practical and CGI. We're always talking about this in these videos, is that you need to have a perfect blending of practical and CGI. CGI enhances the practical effects because we can't do everything practically, and we can't do everything with computer.
Yeah, the set design, absolutely amazing. It felt like a house in the middle of nowhere. The house is actually pretty, is a genuinely creepy house. I think any house in the middle of the country is always going to be creepy. It's very ominous and it's very isolated. The fact that it takes place during winter, it's very snowy outside, it's very cold, is a really good compliment to how the creature designs, for the ghosts, were handled, because they're the exact polar opposite. They're these extremely hot, just charred remains. You can see the embers still burning bright underneath their skin. Their skin is flaking off, and you see ashes. Their eyes are just smoky white. It's very visually striking and a brand new take on ghosts.
Yeah, and also, that's another way that it actually is a love note to, movies like House by the Cemetery. It's just, a really unique take on creatures that we see in horror movies over and over again. Whereas, you see the same characteristics in a lot of movies, and that just kind of becomes the staple, whereas this movie tries to actually stray away from that and do its own thing, and makes it a pretty powerful impact on the movie overall.
Yeah, it literally has no problems bringing new ideas to the table and expanding on, the lore of ghosts or anything like that.
Yes.
Or vengeful spirits. It's really good. I like it. It's very original, and it's something, we need more in modern cinema.
Yeah. I'll leave that one for last. Talking about that epic ending for those who have seen it. We'll leave that little tidbit for last. There's a pretty cool ending to this movie, because, you get this story and you wonder, where is this even going to go? And it does make kind of a full circle in its, there's an open interpretation for its ending. And that is, spoiler alert, we do it all the time in these videos without saying spoiler alert. So you should know by now, and if this is your first video you are watching of ours,
just stop it right now, go and watch the movie, and then come back.
Yes, so we can all talk about it. But, you get a resolve with the townspeople. You get a resolve with...
The best resolution
Yes,
ever.
You get, the resolution with the spirits in the house, and then it makes a full circle back to their deceased son. Throughout the movie, the main female character, who's played by Barbara Crampton, actually, she believes that the spirits in the house are her son the entire movie. There's no real letting up. She feels him. She feels his presence there. She doesn't really let up on that idea. So it comes back around to that whole thing. and she ventures down into the basement where the most activity takes place in the movie, after the ghosts kind of do their own thing, I guess. After that whole thing, she goes down there, and shortly afterwards, the husband follows, and he gets to the top of the stairs where she's already downstairs in the basement, and he just says, "Oh, hi," and then the son's name. So it's a really cool, full circle without ever forgetting that this is why they're grieving in the first place, the loss of their son, and that's a pretty cool ending. And it doesn't really just stop at the resolutions with the townspeople and the spirits themselves. There's also resolve for the main characters.
All in all, this movie is a very well written love letter to, like I said, Italian horror, specifically Lucio Fulci.
Yeah.
And, House by the Cemetery, and I will throw The Beyond in there also, because I feel like it has some strains of The Beyond in there.
Yeah.
Even down to the atmosphere it creates, and just stop on a dime, complete 180, and just going into this big old gore and effects fest. Like, that's really what it is. And you just think to yourself, holy shit, like, this movie literally just did a complete 180, because it does really well with building up the atmosphere and the tension between this couple and the house that they're in and what's going on, and the strain of having these shifty town folk, like, literally just making you feel as uncomfortable and unwelcome. Like, tension is really, really thick. So once that rubber band literally snaps, it legitimately just snaps into a melee of just blood, gore, dismemberment, burning.
Yes. And it's just a really great gore fest at the end. For I do have to admit, when I watched this movie the first time, I didn't finish it because I felt like the pacing was a little too slow. I didn't know where it was going, and I didn't know what to expect of this movie. And so many people had praised it, so I think I had this, like, preconceived idea that this would be, like, really great, where none of these people that were praising this movie said anything bad about the movie. So I just turned it off, and earlier this year, I just decided to finish it. And I'm so glad I did, because the payoff is so great.
I actually picked up this movie as a blind buy. The cover was very striking, and I just read the back of it, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I have a few bucks to spare. Why not? Halloween is literally just around the corner, which I actually bought this movie, I think, 2 years ago. So Halloween was literally, like, around the corner, and I was just like, well, you know what? I'll get this. It's fairly inexpensive, and I have a couple bucks on me, so I got it. I watched it that Halloween 2 years back, and I was just thrilled with it. I was I thought how it was going, and it was a little slow. Like, the pacing is kind of slow, but that's just because it's building up this tension and atmosphere, and then once it just starts getting towards the end, that's when everything just, like, kind of pops off, and you're like, oh, like, this is a completely different movie. But in reality it isn't, because that's why the end is so effective. And I'm very glad that I actually stuck it out, because I was feeling a little just like, all right, where's this gonna go? And I've been disappointed with movies before where it's like, it does so much to try to build up this atmosphere, and then it just fizzles. So I was kind of scared that it was going to do that. And, like, again, I heard nothing about this movie. I literally it was a blind buy for me. So I watched it, and I'm glad I didn't just turn it off when I thought it was gonna be like this run-of-the-mill movie. And I don't blame you for, just turning it off in the beginning, because it does kind of run like a run-of-the-mill modern horror movie that's trying to be something that it's not.
Yeah.
But once you like actually watch the full thing, you realize that it just is its own thing.
Yeah, it is aware of what it is, and it's aware that it's not the greatest movie ever, and that somebody that really loved Lucio Fulci made this movie. Yeah. That is like basically the gist of this movie. So if you want to see something that's kind of a modern take on a Lucio Fulci film, go ahead and watch this one. This is great.
It's a beautiful love letter. I think they're two totally different movies, but The Editor is a really good black comedy that deals with Italian. Like, it's literally just...
Oh, that one's great.
Yeah. It's
maybe for another review.
Maybe. But that's a really good satire on Italian horror films.
All of its aspects.
Where We Are Still Here is a love letter.
Yes.
They're both love letters, and I feel like they both go hand in hand with what they're trying to accomplish, but they are two totally different movies, and they have totally different tones to them. But
they're just really great modern takes on what Italian directors were doing in like the 70s,
yeah.
70s and 80s. So if you really enjoy those types of movies, definitely see We Are Still Here.
And I guess final question, would you watch it again?
Definitely. I feel that We Are Still Here is one of my go-to Halloween movies now.
I agree. I definitely would watch it again.
I recommend it too. Obviously, since we did this review, but all of our reviews aren't going to be about, we really enjoy this movie, we really recommend this movie. Some of our videos, as mentioned, we totally wrecked on The Devil's Candy because we really hate that movie, and we still make jokes about it because it's such a terrible movie. But if a movie is so bad, we have to review it. Yeah. We have to make a video for you guys and just go off on it, because with the barrage of films that we get, this, I'm not even saying that there was like the greatest decade or anything, but jeez, there is like a shit storm. So when we hear something so bad, we have to review it, but we're also going to point out films that are lesser talked about. That is what we do our channel for, and point them out for the qualities that they do have and what they do contribute to modern horror.
Yes. As horror fans, I feel like...
Or just like horror in general. I'm
sorry. Us as horror fans and as, cinephiles, we just want to get down to brass tacks. So yes, it is... We are fans talking about these movies, but at the same time, we're just getting down to the real, okay, this sucked about the movie, but this was good about the movie. And
you're never gonna
it's always going to be up to you, whether you want to watch this movie, whether, the review is good enough, or, whether this movie is just terrible and you're just going to avoid altogether.
Yeah, totally. So I feel that, with We Are Still Here, it does contribute to, paying homage to the old and the classics that everybody knows, especially if you're a Lucio Fulci fan. And then it also keeps it fresh and... modern.
So it's not your just typical run-of-the-mill Italian ripoff.
Yeah, exactly, because it could have been that.
It really
and
could have.
And it could have been your typical modern-day supernatural crap fest.
Yeah.
So, in the end, of course, go check it out. We Are Still Here is probably still on Netflix. So take advantage of that while it's on a streaming service that mostly everybody has. Don't expect the greatest movie, but expect to be like, all right, I kind of get what they're saying here. And if you have seen it before, or if you haven't, you just have something to ask or something to say, whoever you are, if you just want to say something about We Are Still Here, or have any more recommendations for us, whether it be something supernatural that is, a great movie to mention that a lot of people don't talk about, or, if you just want to say what you're going to say, go ahead and comment below.
We always love taking recommendations on movies that we should review or talk about. And we're not limited to horror. Like we said, we also do cult.
Yes, we do.
Cult classics. So if there's anything you want to hear our thoughts on, down there, just leave it. Just type it out. Leave it down there.
Yeah. Unless you're rude, get the hell out of here. No, I'm kidding. Okay, well, I think that's a wrap. And, until next time.
See ya.